So, what is ASP.NET Core? Well, it's a cross-platform, high-performance, open-source framework for building modern, cloud-enabled, internet-connected applications. If you're interested, you can have a look at the source code, log an issue, or even contribute to it. We're looking at the GitHub repository for ASP.NET Core right now. A quick tip: once you feel comfortable with using ASP.NET Core, try and take the next step by having a look at the source code to learn how the team implemented a feature you're fascinated by or think is interesting. One of the best ways to learn new things is by looking at a good, curated codebase and figuring out how a framework really works. Anyway, I'm diverting a bit. With ASP.NET Core, you can build web apps and services, IoT apps and mobile backends, like APIs. You can develop on Windows, Linux or macOS. You can deploy to the cloud or on-premises, and you can run on .NET or .NET Core. ASP.NET Core can be considered a framework for building all these things, while .NET Core and .NET are, depending on the version, the developer platforms it runs on. That last remark may require a bit more explanation. ASP.NET Core initially ran on .NET Core 1, or the full .NET framework. Running on the full .NET framework meant you could use your old libraries, but it also meant none of the good stuff enabled by .NET Core was possible. It wasn't cross-platform, it was much slower than running it on .NET Core, and so on. So if you could, targeting .NET Core was the way to go. Yet this wasn't always feasible because lots of stuff wasn't ported yet. ASP.NET Core 2 improved upon that by porting much more. With it, you could target .NET Core 2 or the full .NET framework. But the fact that you could still target the full .NET framework was starting to hold back development in new features. So the next version, ASP.NET Core 3, stopped supporting the full .NET framework. You had to run it on .NET Core 3. And then something happened. .NET Core was becoming increasingly popular, but we still had the old and trusted full .NET framework hanging around at version 4.8. Not much new had happened with it over the last few years, but a lot of companies were still on it. Still are, probably. A lot of effort was put into the next .NET Core version to ensure that a lot of useful functionality from the old .NET framework would be supported, with hugely improved performance and cross-platform support. At that moment, .NET Core was renamed to .NET, and version 4 was skipped to avoid confusion with the full .NET framework version numbering, which was at 4.8. .NET 5 was born and released in November 2020. At the same time, ASP.NET Core 5 was released, which now ran on .NET 5. .NET 5 is a so-called current release. For current releases, there is no long-term support, which means support will end 3 months after the release of the next version. That probably means that by the time you're watching this course, support for .NET 5 has already ended. After that, it continued evolving up to the point where we are now. ASP.NET Core 6 running on .NET 6. .NET 6 is a long-term supported version. These versions are supported for 3 years after their release date. With that, you should be able to position .NET and ASP.NET Core. Let's continue by creating our first ASP.NET Core 6 project.